against 7 strangers, does that not make you a serial killer?
So I didn't kill them every day, did I? Did I go out there every day and say, I'm gonna kill? If I did, there would be
Well, no,
hundreds.
it took you 12 months.
Then he brings up Rex again, and that's when I just looked at him and I started sobbing.
If I had shot my own children, would I not have done a good job of it?
First of all, women generally don't commit crimes this heinous.
Right.
This is usually the domain of men.
That's unfortunate.
Hi, Gabe.
Hey, Danny.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I had a good time last night hanging out with your brother and his family and other friends. And
I'm his family.
his other family.
Very, very cool.
Yeah. How about you?
Good. I will keep this short because we have quite a long story.
Fair.
But I will give you a little update of yesterday and how my day went.
Yeah, please do.
So we went to visit Kobe's grandpa, right? And Kobe's grandpa it's like an hour and a half drive to get there and an hour and a half back. So it's like 3 hours of driving. It took us 6 hours of driving yesterday because there's so much traffic for, I don't know why. It was brutal. And I was like, Kobe, you drive and then I'll be able to read and finish my book for this case, right?
Yeah.
But somehow, apparently when I hit 30, I now can no longer read in a car and I got horribly car sick.
No.
Yeah. I used to read in cars all the time.
No.
Yeah.
What?
It was horrible.
Is that a vision thing?
It's an ear thing.
Have you been having ear issues?
No, but as you age, your body just starts hating you.
I would get that checked out. I don't think that's like a regular, Danny, you're 30. You're not like 90. It's not like you shouldn't be falling apart so rapidly.
I mean, I got car sick for reading in a car. I don't think it's that big of a deal.
That's kind of unusual.
Wait, what are you talking about? My entire family has horrible car sickness.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I guess anytime I'm a passenger, I'll on occasion pull out my phone and read news or something.
I can do that. I can do that
okay.
totally fine. But something about maybe like a full book and like having so many, I don't know what it was, but I was like, wow, I think I might puke. And then speaking of puke, so we got home around like 9 p.m. and we find Boo had gone on top of the counter and went into our unopened bag of brown sugar and ate the entire bag of brown sugar.
So he's going to add diabetes to his list of ailments.
Apparently, that's his goal.
Okay, this is like the third time in like 6 episodes one of your dogs has gotten on the counter and eaten.
It's all
something.
Boo.
Okay, remember, first it was the gingerbread houses. I think it was anarchy.
Oh, that was anarchy.
Yeah. So maybe just stop putting things on the counter.
Okay, well, we blocked off the kitchen.
Okay.
We put stools in front of there's like a little opening that's not very big. So we put stools in front of it. And we're like, yeah, Boo can't get in here. And I don't know, he apparently did.
No.
The annoying thing is all we had on our counter was a bag of unopened brown sugar and a bag of flour. So, I mean, I guess it's good he didn't eat the flour, but.
I mean, the sugar can't be good for him.
I Googled it. It's not toxic. But yeah, no, it's probably not great.
Sugar?
Okay, but anyways, so he ate an entire bag of brown sugar.
Yeah.
And he clearly did not feel good. And so I was sitting on the couch reading, and he's just laying there on his bed on the floor. And all of a sudden he looks at me and he opens his mouth.
What?
And he projectile
No.
vomits. I can't. Oh my God, it was wild. I've never.
Danny's losing it.
I'm crying. It was so funny. I've never seen anything projectile vomit. Oh my God. Oh, sorry. I'm probably fucking up the audio.
No, it will live.
Oh my gosh. Okay, but you know in like movies?
Yeah, where it's like a stream. How do you projectile vomit sugar, though?
Because he had drank a bunch of water. Oh my gosh, I'm like literally crying. It was so wild. I've never seen anything like it. I've always thought movies were like exaggerating it, but it looked exactly. exactly like the movies. It was so funny. You know, it just kept going. Our living room was covered.
Oh no.
It was covered in like the sugar water and like remnants of his breakfast.
Oh, that is gross.
And I went to go and clean it up. I can't. Oh my god, it was so wild. I went to go.
Oh no. It's gonna be 5 minutes of Danny cracking up for our intro.
Oh my god. Okay. I went to clean it up and I threw up all over myself.
Oh no.
Yeah. So I threw up all over myself. And I had to run away. I ran to the bathroom and I just threw up more. And so Kobe had to clean up. Kobe had to clean up everything.
Oh, he's a nurse. He's used to it.
Yeah, it was so funny. And then after that, I stayed up until like 1 a.m. to finish the book. And here we are.
Oh, that sucks.
Oh my god, it was so wild though. I've never seen anything like it.
My cheeks hurt.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's gonna be hard to edit. If you do edit it. Oh, anyways, that's my update. And now I'm ready to start this story.
All right. I don't have anything that could possibly top that. That is insane.
It was so funny. I started throwing up and Kobe was just like looking. He was like, what is happening? I have a super sensitive stomach. Things like that just...
Fair.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts though? Like, so he turns to you, boom. He starts vomiting. Like, what's going through your head?
He looks at me and he opens his mouth. It's like a hose was turned on. And at first I didn't even register. I was so confused. Like, is a demon coming out?
Yeah, basically.
And then quickly I was like, oh my gosh, he's puking up everything.
Oh no.
Yeah. Oh, it was so funny. Luckily, most of it stayed off the rug. It was all on the hard floor, but oh my god, it was wild. It was so much puke.
I hope he's smart enough to like know the cause and effect there.
Oh,
like,
absolutely not.
Okay.
But after that, he clearly felt so much better. He was like walking around happy and
Yeah.
oh, it was so funny. But yeah, that was last night.
What kind of boggles my mind is he's a dog and he's eating this sugar.
Yeah.
Like, this is not a texture he gets in his day to day.
Mm-hmm.
But he ate the whole bag. Like,
The entire bag.
Why at no point was he like, this isn't food?
I don't know. He's the stupidest dog I've ever met.
I don't understand. Like, dogs, they just eat anything on the floor. Like, I don't.
Well, he's on his medication because of his health issues. And that medication makes him really hungry.
Oh.
Yeah. So before he was on that medication, he was not food motivated at all. But now it's like all he can think about. I mean, I was like, this is an unopened bag of brown sugar. Like, I didn't even cross my mind that he would.
I don't know why to a dog it wouldn't be like the same thing as sand.
Yeah.
It's just like this thing here.
I don't know. But oh my God, it was wild. He's fine now. He had a little bit of diarrhea overnight, but
Of course.
he's good now.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. And then this story, it's more wild than the story I just told.
Okay. That seems hard to top.
It's crazy. Like, I finished the book and I was left and I was just like, what did I just read? Like, this is such a crazy story and it takes place in the span of like 3 years.
Okay.
So I guess I'll just start. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mary Linda Patricia Vaughn was born August 22nd, 1937. And we're just going to call her Pat from now on.
Okay.
And her mother is Marguerite. Marguerite was unmarried. And back then, which was 1937, that was
Scandalous.
It's quite scandalous. And she had put a name on the birth certificate and even pretended to be married. But there's no record that marriage existed or was real. She was just covering to protect herself and probably Pat too.
Yeah.
And when Pat was born, Marguerite had her parents watch Pat while she worked. So Pat was mostly raised by her grandparents in the younger years, while her mom worked as a waitress. When Pat was around 2 years old, Marguerite once again got pregnant and had a baby boy. At this point, she didn't even pretend to have a husband. She was just like, yeah, I had a baby boy. I think she's just tired. She's over it.
That puts you at a lot of a huge disadvantage in those times when I don't think women could even open bank accounts back then.
Probably not. Yeah. Yeah. She didn't care.
Damn, though.
She had planned to put him up for adoption.
Okay.
So I don't know if that makes a difference. Because back now it was it was either 1939 or 1940, which was in the Depression era,
Yeah.
And so she could barely afford one child, much less a second one. But as soon as she held him, she fell in love and was like, I cannot give him up. So she decided to keep him.
This is why you never hold them.
And she named him Reginald Kent Vaughan.
That's a strong name.
Mm-hmm. But she just called him Kent. In 1942, she met Second Lieutenant Clifford Brown Radcliffe. And I never say his name again, but he does come back into the story. And I call him Marguerite's husband. And they quickly fell in love and get married, and he adopts her 2 children.
Nice. Very progressive of him for those times.
Yeah. And Marguerite was described as being super duper attractive and just a lady.
A lady?
Yeah, she cared about her appearance. She came off as very proper. She was a lady. And she absolutely loved her kids and doted on them and would do anything for them, especially Pat. In her eyes, Pat could do no wrong. Pat was special. Pat was perfect. Pat was everything.
Spoiler alert, she wasn't.
Pat, on the other hand, did not love her brother because he took away some of the attention from her.
Oh no, that's a bad sign.
I know. How could her brother do that? When Kent was very young, he contracted meningitis that left him essentially deaf. And he wore hearing aids and was really good at reading lips, but back then it was really hard to have any disability. So his life was not easy. And on top of that, he was always second to Pat. Pat was the it child, and he was there. And Pat actually grew up into this stunning girl and ended up meeting her entire life. Everybody's like, oh, she was a beautiful baby. She had these big emerald eyes. And then she never went through an awkward teenage phase. She just turned into a beautiful woman. And at age 15, she married a man named Gilbert Taylor. And you're like, age 15? Yeah, age 15, she married.
How old is he?
He wasn't that much older than her. It was, I want to say between 2 and 4 years older.
Oh, okay. I was...
No, wait. He was definitely at least 18. So 3, 4 years older. Because they get married. Actually, no. She gets pregnant. Then they get married. Yep. And then he enlists. And she gets pregnant at age 15. And they get married. And then he enlists in the army to make some money. That was really common back then.
It was. It's just, I'm sort of seeing the pieces of where things start to go wrong.
Yes. So she has a baby girl named Susan, and Gilbert was stationed in Massachusetts. Oh my gosh. Gilbert was stationed in Massachusetts, and I can speak. And they lived there for a bit and had a second daughter. Unfortunately, life was not easy, and Pat and her kids ended up moving back in with Pat's mom. Kent gave up his bedroom and moved into the living room so Pat could have it. Pat moved back in with Gilbert for a time, and they had a third baby, a baby boy named Ronnie.
You lost me a little bit there. So were they having marital troubles and that's why Pat moved out? Or back home?
marital problems / mostly financial.
Okay.
Pat wanted more, and Gilbert was making what he was making, and he couldn't afford to give her more. And I do not know if this is true, but she would tell her mom, like, there was days where they couldn't afford to eat and stuff like that. So she moved back in with her mom to get help. And when they moved back in with the mom, Kent moves to the couch so Pat could have his bedroom. And then Pat decides, let's give it a chance, and moves back in with Gilbert and has a baby boy. And then once again moves back in with her parents, and they're married for 15 years. And this is for the entire 15 years is how it was. She'll move in with her parents and then move back in with him and then back with her parents. But it sounds like the majority of the time they were married, she was living with her parents. She would have these sprees where she'd live with Gilbert.
A little strange for the times.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even for now, actually, it'd be very odd to see a married couple where one partner goes back with the parents repeatedly over a 15-year span.
He was in the army, and he was moved around a lot and stationed, and there was times where he was overseas. So I think, that was a lot more explanatory.
Yeah. I would like to know how common it is for the families to follow the military spouse, though.
Yeah.
So you hear about the term army brat, right? Kids who grow up all over the world in military bases.
Yeah.
So it does happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the book, her daughter Susan, the oldest daughter, recounts this one time when they're living with Gilbert. She has a memory of where she walked home and saw her mom beating herself with pots and pans, hard. And she was like, what the heck? And she ended up just leaving. And later, her mom claimed that a salesman had forced his way into the house and raped her.
This is Pat's mom.
No, this is Pat.
Okay.
Her daughter saw her.
Oh, her daughter got it.
And it was just an interesting memory. And you'll notice kind of a pattern like that. So in 1965, Kent was in his and she obviously was for attention. In 1965, Kent was in his early to mid 20s, and the love of his life had just broken off the engagement with him, and he had moved back in with his parents, and Pat was cruel to him. She told him that his fiancée broke off the engagement because she preferred girls, and she told him that might have been true. I don't know.
Yeah, what?
And she told him that he was a bastard that didn't belong with the family, and he actually...
She's a bastard too.
Yeah, but neither of them knew it. They thought the
Right,
they were young.
Yes.
They thought the colonel, they thought he was her father.
Yeah.
And so he finds out that it's real and it's not his father, and that was earth-shattering for him.
How could it not be?
Yeah. And then in February of 1966, Kent got into a car accident, and he would have survived if not for the self-inflicted gunshot to his chest.
What? That's not... So is it really the accident?
I'm not sure. I think what happened was he was trying to kill himself by crashing his car. It didn't work, so then he shot himself.
That would make more sense than him shooting himself while he's driving and then crashing.
That seems to be the general consensus of what happened. Now, we are on March 27th, 1971. Susan, Pat's daughter, is 15, and it was her wedding day to a lovely man.
How old is he?
Actually, I don't know. That's a good question. Doesn't matter. So, because what matters is what I'm about to tell you.
Okay.
On her wedding day, during the reception, when Pat decided to announce that during the reception to celebrate Pat's daughter, Pat decides to announce that she is getting divorced, shocking everyone there, including her husband.
Okay, I've heard of some crazy mother stories at weddings. I could have sworn she was going to announce a pregnancy or come wearing white, but to blindside her whole family with a divorce on a wedding, that's new to me.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then she demands that Gilbert leave immediately, so he does, but he was shocked. He was like, what is happening? happening? So
That's the only father her kids have ever known.
yeah.
Okay.
And after her divorce, she, begins to dress a bit more provocatively and just really enjoy the attention it garnered. And she kind of comes into herself, I guess. Now, what she does realize is she needs income and she's going to have to get a job. But she ends up falling off a horse and is trampled. Her family is really into horses. They own a stable on the land that they own. So her family's into horses and she falls off a horse and gets trampled, and she's ultimately okay, but there is a fear of her developing blood clots. And after this accident, she seems to develop a fainting disorder that just kind of like happens randomly. She faints. It'll come up quite a few times.
I have my doubts on the legitimacy of this fainting disorder.
As do I. Now, Pat notices a man named Tom who works at the stables. Tom has known Pat and her family for quite a while, and Tom was what one would call hot, attractive.
Is there a photo?
You can Google him. Tom, oh gosh, what is his name? Tom Allanson, Allanson. There's more current pictures, but in his heyday, when he worked at the stable, he was supposedly like really...
Yeah, something tells me the guy who came up is not the one we're talking about.
Oh, okay. Anyways, I only saw pictures of... I did see pictures of him when he was younger. I would not personally find him attractive.
But that was the general consensus of the people in the story.
Yeah, and I've also, looking at all the pictures and the consensus of what they considered attractive, I would say back then has changed to what we consider attractive now.
Hell, remember the 90s where the ideal figure was like super tall, super skinny,
Yeah,
white,
hippie,
yeah,
long straight hair.
yeah, and now it's more like racially ambiguous and curvy, and so
Yeah,
things-
stuff changes.
beauty standards change.
Yeah. But unfortunately, he was married. So he was just like the hot guy who worked at the stables until he started going through his divorce and he needed somewhere to stay. He ends up moving in with Pat and her family because he worked at their stables, and he slept on their couch. And in exchange, he continued working and taking care of their horses. While living there...
How old is Tom? Is he
I know this. Hold on.
is he age appropriate for Patty? I guess Patty would be like 15, right?
Oh, Pat, we get into it. I'll tell you in a second.
Sorry, I mean Patty would be 30 because her daughter's 15.
Yes. She'd probably be 31 now.
Okay.
We'll get into it. I don't want to give it up yet.
Fair.
So he had gone through the divorce. He was staying at on their couch, and he and Pat quickly hit it off and became inseparable, quickly. And then in 1973, so she's probably almost 32 now, Pat and Tom decide to buy their own house and move in together in Zebulon, Georgia. And they're a young, attractive couple. Don't worry. I'll answer your questions.
Okay.
And Tom had been married twice before he got with Pat. He had a very, very short marriage. I want to say a couple months when he was fairly young. And then his second marriage, he had 2 kids, and it had lasted a couple years. But ultimately did not work out. But since he had kids, his family was very, very against him getting divorced. His dad was like, if you have kids, you do not divorce your wife. And his wife didn't want to divorce him. But he wasn't happy in the marriage, and he wanted to get divorced. And so his parents end up siding with his ex-wife. And they essentially just cut him out of their life.
Wow. I wonder what his reasoning for the divorce was. Maybe he just felt suffocated with the responsibility.
He did. She didn't work. He was taking care of her. She didn't clean. She didn't really do anything. He felt like he was doing everything, and he wasn't happy. And he just didn't think he could live like that his entire life. I think Tom's parents were very conservative, I guess.
It was the time.
Exactly,
too.
yeah. And his father was named Walter, and his mom was named Carolyn, and his ex-wife was named Carolyn. So it was Big Carolyn and Little Carolyn.
I could never do that.
I know.
There was a girl in high school who had the same name as my mom, who had a thing for me. And yeah, but just her having my mom's name, I was like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, yeah, Tom, that's why, he didn't really have anywhere to go, and he was living on their couch because his family cut him off. And his dad was a lawyer, and Tom had thought that, and his dad goes by the name Walter, same as my dog. And his dad had thought, like, Tom will change his mind. So he pretended to be helping Tom throughout the divorce, but really he was just making it take longer and longer in hopes that Tom would change his mind. But Tom didn't, and he met Pat, and in 1973, they decide, let's move in together and buy a house. They find... Yes.
If he was feeling suffocated by the responsibility of being the sole provider and maybe even primary caregiver of his kids, why would he jump into a relationship with Pat, who also has no means of providing for herself?
So Pat is described as incredibly attractive and very charming, and people just kind of like orbited around her bubble, She was one of those people.
Oh, man. On some level, people are really kind of simple.
Yeah, and Pat was also 6 years older than Tom.
And he liked that?
I mean, he liked her, but all of her kids were kind of older at this point. Both of the girls were married off. Her son, I want to say I get to it lower, but he was either 13 or 15. So it's not like she had her kids to take care of, really.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. And they found that it wasn't just a house in Zebulon. It's in Georgia. This whole story takes place in Georgia. And Zebulon sounds like, what is it? It doesn't matter. So anyways, they find this house in Zebulon that has a bunch of acreage as well. And Pat, she has always wanted to live on a southern plantation house with acreage and horses and orchards, and, she wants to be a Southern belle.
Of course. Who doesn't?
And so unfortunately, neither of them could afford it. Tom's family had money, right? Because his dad was a lawyer, but his parents had cut him off, so they didn't have money. And Tom went to his grandparents to help buy this property, and he was like, if you help me with the down payment, I can handle the mortgage, which was called a balloon mortgage, which means it balloons in payment after a couple years.
That sounds like a terrible idea.
Yeah, it truly does.
Back then it was probably like some pocket change to buy land.
But his grandparents were older. They were at this point, they're in their mid-70s.
Okay.
And his grandma had a stroke recently, and they're having trouble. The grandfather was having to take care of the grandma. And they were like, look, we will help you with this down payment if you build us a little cottage on your property, and we can move in so that we're close to you. And, maybe Pat could help us and you could help us. And it seems like a good...
What a reasonable deal. Because, by the way, the life expectancy in the 1970s, around this time, right?
Yeah, so we're in 73.
Is 70 years old.
Wow. So
in the most cold, awful, pragmatic sense, you're probably not going to be caring for them for that long.
Yeah. Right. So Tom's grandparents help with the down payment, and then Pat's parents also help with what they could. And their condition was that Pat and Tom have to name the farm after Pat's dead brother Kent, in memoriam.
I guess that's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever. Yeah.
They do it. So they end up being able, and they buy the property, and they move in late 1973.
You made it work.
Ooh, what page are we on of notes here? We're on page 3 of 8, guys.
Boy.
So it's about to get wild.
Okay.
Tom planned to marry Pat as soon as his second divorce was finalized, but of course, now we know Tom's dad is trying to extend it as long as possible because he's like, Tom's going to realize what a mistake he's making. He's going to come back. But Tom doesn't. And So Tom and Pat move into the house. Pat's 15-year-old son also moves in with them. He's named Ronnie, which Pat was a very, very lax mother. Some would say not there at all. He was able to do whatever he wanted. But Tom was just like madly in love with Pat. And he was just happy. He didn't care that the mortgage was a ton of money. He didn't care that she wanted more and more. He was just like blinded by love. Even at one point, Tom, he had a radio, a very nice radio, and Pat threw it and broke it because she said it reminded him of his wife, who he was still married to at the time.
Why would a radio remind him of his wife?
She was convinced that he and his wife had shared the radio, and therefore it reminded her of the wife. Is it logical? No.
I mean, she realizes he's actively attempting to divorce his wife.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she also wouldn't let him hang up any pictures of his kids because it reminds her of his wife. He was like, okay, no problem.
Okay, how attractive was she?
I mean, I don't consider her attractive, but back then I almost wonder if maybe, because everybody talks about like her personality too, and how like charming she was and how she came off as so like dainty, and so I wonder if it was more of like, not only was she considered attractive for the times, but also she had just like this personality that was alluring.
I have met people with very, like the kind of personality that draws you in.
Mm-hmm.
If I knew they were breaking things or not letting someone have photos of their kids up, that would radically change my view of their personality. We
will see what and if Tom ever changes his opinion of her.
Fair.
So in May of 1974, the divorce is finally finalized. And the same exact day they get the paperwork finalizing the divorce, Pat is like, let's get married today.
Okay.
And so they had a horse show planned for that evening. And they're like, well, let's just get married at the same time. So they do. They get married at the horse show that night on the same day his divorce was finalized.
She just really wants to be married with him, okay?
Yeah. And on the way home from the wedding, Pat and Tom had taken different cars because Tom had to like deliver some horses for the horse show, and Pat just took their other car. On the way home, she got into a car accident and broke her collarbone. But yeah. And that just, Tom had to take care of her and further made him feel responsible for her, I guess.
For a broken collarbone?
Yeah, she's dainty. She needs help, Gabe. She can't do anything with a broken collarbone.
I mean, you can still like walk and use your other arm.
Not Pat. Pat needed help.
Okay.
And throughout, this all, even though Tom had married Pat and whatever, like it didn't help the situation with his parents. It made it worse. They weren't like, oh, you're so in love with Pat and you married her. They were like, you're marrying this like whore, for lack of a better term.
That is the words they would use back then.
Yeah, they didn't like how she dressed. They didn't like the fact that Tom had divorced his ex-wife. They did not thaw, and they were not interested at all in meeting Pat. And they continued keeping his ex-wife in their family and continued to ice Tom out. So
the disconnect is kind of, I'm having a hard time reconciling how much the parents hate Tom for divorcing his ex-wife and them not supporting their son in his new marriage. Tom seemingly divorced his ex-wife, because she wasn't doing much, right? Mm-hmm. At least that's what we know so far. I could still see the parents, Tom's parents, saying or thinking, but this is still the mother of your kids, and you made vows, but to completely ice him out seems really harsh. So are you going to reveal later other stuff about Tom's ex-wife?
No, that's just, his parents felt really strongly about this. And
Do you know if it's because they really liked the ex-wife? Or is it more just the institution of marriage? They were like, no, this is forever.
they liked the ex-wife, but I do think it was more of the institution of marriage, and they were religious, and they were upset with him for getting his first divorce, even though that one he was young, and it didn't even last that long. They were upset about it, but they forgave him. They're like, look, you made a mistake. Don't make it again. He marries this other woman. They have children together. And then he divorces her again. They're like, no, we're not supporting this. Like, you stay married. When you have kids, you stay married. And that was just their line that they drew.
Are his kids coming around?
What do you mean?
Like, do Tom's kids come to the farm?
With Tom and Pat?
Yeah.
No. Caroline kept him.
Okay. So does he ever see his kids?
I think none of my research really talked about it, but I don't really think so. But I don't think it was on him. I think he really got the short end of the stick in the divorce, and she got full custody because his dad had helped her, and he was kind of blindsided about that. So,
okay.
Yeah, it's a sucky situation that just like somehow freaking goes off the rails very quickly. So Pat, this entire time, just cannot stand the fact that Tom's parents have iced them out. And she's like, I deserve a chance. Like, Tom, you need to make them talk to me. You need to make them come and like meet me and all this stuff. And she will not leave it alone. And Tom's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, they don't want to see me. They don't want to meet you. It is what it is. We have your family, it's fine. But she can't let it go. She cannot let it go. And while this is all happening, he lost his job at the stables, and he began to focus on his second job working as a blacksmith. So not just like a blacksmith, but like making horseshoes and fairing horses, putting horseshoes on them. And somehow this brought him closer to working directly with other women, more so than he did as a stable boy. Because it was stable boy, you just work with the horses mostly. Now he's working with the horses' owners.
Okay.
Pat did not like that. Pat was like, you cannot talk to other women if I'm not present. So she began to go into work with him. And
I'm waiting for the examples of this shining personality we keep hearing about.
I don't know. I do not know what to tell you. I don't ever see it. I feel like it's one of those inexplicable things that people will just mention, and you just look at the story and you're like, what the fuck? But
It must have just been really attractive.
yeah, she wasn't that attractive. So
Halo effect.
yeah. So she begins to go into work with him. But of course she can't do that all the time. So on times when he like goes in alone, she would have these horrible fainting spells, and he'd have to rush home to her. So I don't know if it was because of the fact that she would go into work with him and like perhaps was kind of icy to his clients, or if it was him having to rush home and miss client appointments. But his work as a blacksmith kind of started to deteriorate.
Rightfully so.
Yeah. And in the spring of 1974, something odd happened. Pat's mom, Marguerite, receives a phone call from Tom's dad telling her to talk some sense into Tom because he had snuck into his ex-wife's house and put formaldehyde in the milk. And Pat's mom is like, what are you talking about? And Tom's like, the milk tested positive for formaldehyde, and it was Tom, and somebody also broke into my house. Tom's dad is speaking. If somebody broke into my house and stole some of my guns, and I know it's Tom. Tom is going crazy. And Pat's mom is like, what is happening? Like, none of this makes any sense. You are going crazy.
How did he get Marguerite's number?
Phone
They won't
book?
even... Oh, right. That was the thing once.
Ask a neighbor?
Yeah.
Shock they have phones. I don't know.
Yeah. Back then we used pigeons.
Yeah. And so then that was spring, so like April-ish. In June, something else odd happened. Pat was on a small mowing machine they have mowing the grass of their farm, and she notices a truck parked on the road, and she's looking at it on her mower, and then she looks away from the truck and looks forward, and there's a man there who appeared. And he is naked, and he is exposing himself to her. And then she recognizes him because she's seen him in pictures, and it is Tom's dad, Walter. So she panics and turns the mower around and rushes to the neighbor's house, but no one's home. So then she runs home and she calls her husband, and he's like, call the police. So she calls the police, and the sheriff comes and searches the house and property, and he doesn't find anything except a scared Pat holding an unloaded .22 caliber gun. And so he very politely shows her how to load the gun and shoot it, and then he leaves.
That's it?
Yeah.
So no evidence it happened?
Yeah.
You lost me at she turned the mower around. Was it one of those riding mowers?
Yeah.
Like those cannot go that fast.
Yeah.
So you're just like...
She's like, ah!
Yeah,
Funny. So Tom, arrives home as soon as he can after that happens. And then that same month, but like a week or so later, Tom's parents are driving their car to go visit some land they had purchased, and they are straight up ambushed. Like their car is shot up with a gun, and they are able to get away like relatively unscathed. But the police find a spot where the gunman had like cleared a spot and had been waiting for them, and there's no answer, like who did this. It doesn't make any sense how.
Well, hold on. What was the caliber of rounds used?
It wasn't 22.
Okay, I was gonna say, could you imagine if she just the same 22?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was, but it wasn't a 22. It was something more intense, and a little 22.
Yeah.
And so, at this point, Tom's dad is thinking. Walter is thinking Tom is trying to kill him. And Tom is thinking his dad is trying to, rape his wife or something. And so there's this entire feud starting to materialize. And at this time, Tom and Pat have only been married 7 weeks.
It's only been 7 weeks?
It's only been 7 weeks since the wedding.
No.
Yeah.
All of this has gone down in 7 weeks?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And Pat is still focused on the fact that Tom's parents don't like her, and she will not leave him alone about how he needs to go and talk to her his parents.
Even after Tom's dad supposedly exposed himself, she's still like, why don't they like me?
Yeah.
And Tom isn't like,
Well, she's also like, you need to go talk to them because that was not okay. We can't just leave it. We need to be a family. You need to go figure out what is happening. So she's using it as both.
This being 7 weeks in is rough.
Yeah. Poor Tom is he's like, how did this happen?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And so Pat cannot let it go. And she has worn Tom down to the point where on July 3rd, 1974, he agrees to go talk to his mom. But he's going to make sure to do it while his dad is at work, because he is fully convinced if his dad sees him on site, his dad will just come after him. Because keep in mind, for some reason, his dad thinks that Tom is trying to poison his own children, and shot up his car.
Yeah.
So Tom's dad is...
I'm surprised the cops haven't been involved. If they found evidence of tampering with food and you got shot at.
They have been involved, but there's no... each time the police have been called, but each time they're like, no, there's no evidence of any who it is. The formaldehyde was in the milk, which is, by the way, never explained.
Okay.
So don't expect an answer there, because I don't know.
Could you imagine if it was just some factory screwed up and it's just coincidence?
I mean, I just don't understand. I don't know. It's insane. And so Tom, on July 3rd, 1974, he's going to go talk to his mom. So he begins to head over there around 3:30 or 4. his dad is supposed to be at work until at least 6 p.m. He's a lawyer. He's a busy man, you know. At 5:30 p.m., Tom's dad gets a phone call from a woman warning him that Tom is heading over to his house to cause trouble. So his dad immediately leaves work and rushes home with a brand new gun that he had bought that day.
Pat's trying to get her own husband killed.
I think she's trying to get everybody killed. You'll see. So
Yeah.
Walter rushes in and finds his wife at home, and she had arrived with, it's her, Tom's ex-wife, and their kids, and they had gone shopping because they're going to have like a 4th of July party the next day. But they come home, they find the power's out. Walter rushes in and they're like, the power's out. And Walter's like, oh, let me go and check the basement, because that's where the circuit breaker is. And he brings his gun with him and goes and looks down. And he finds that the breaker box, the circuit, whatever it's called, has been shut off. So he flips the switch, it goes back on. And I know, I'm still like, they had power back then? They did. They also had phones. So he turns it on, he searches the basement, comes back up. He says, it's clear, but somebody shut off the power, so somebody was in the house. And so because of that, he goes to call the police, and he finds the phone line has been cut.
When did Pat have the time to do this? How did she even know to do this?
Freaking Pat, man. So Walter goes to the neighbors and calls the police with their phone. And they come, and the officer comes, and he's like, well, do you want me to search the house? And Walter's like, no, you don't need to search the house. I already searched it. I have, he was in the army at one point. He's like, I have experience. I searched the house. It's fine. I just want a record of this, because Tom came and he turned the breaker box off and he cut the phone line. And the policeman's like, okay, is there anything else you want me to do? And Walter's like, yeah, arrest Tom. And the officer's like, you didn't see anybody. Like, we don't know for sure it was Tom. I can't arrest anybody. There's nothing I can do. If you won't let me search the house, I can't do anything. And so Walter's like, fine, leave then. So the officer leaves, and Walter drives Tom's ex-wife to her house to check everything out, because he's like, if Tom was here, maybe he is at your house as well. And they go, and nobody's there. It's empty. So Walter clears it. And then on the way back home, Tom's ex-wife sees Pat in her blue Jeep in the neighborhood. And she tries to follow her, but Pat manages to disappear.
How? In a car?
Yeah.
How?
I don't know. It just says like she had like pulled into. So Tom's parents live in one house, and then the grandparents live in a house next door. And she said that she had like backed into the driveway of the grandparents' house and then sped off really quickly. So,
okay.
I don't know. And they arrive home, and Walter goes back down into the basement. And what happens next is slightly unknown, and we will never know. And we only know the aftermath. So Tom's ex-wife is upstairs, and she hears Walter yell up to her and tells her, take the kids and get out of the house, because he has him cornered in the cubbyhole. So in the basement, there's this random little like hole. I don't know what to call it. It's like there's the wall, and then there's like a little storage opening, I guess. And it goes probably, I only saw a picture of it, but it looks like it goes pretty deep. Like I would say like 6 feet back, but it's only maybe 3 feet tall. Like it's a weird little thing, and they call it the cubbyhole.
Okay. Is it like down at the ground, or like at like chest level, the hole?
It's like down at the ground.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he then calls up to his wife, and he's like, bring down my new gun. So he had gone down with his little pistol.
Yeah.
And he's like, I need something bigger. So he tells her, bring down my new gun, which is a rifle. And next, all we know is that about an hour after the first call from the police, they get a second call to come back to the house immediately. So they come, and they find Tom's mom dead on the basement stairs, and Tom's father dead on the basement floor, and both had been shot. These are the preliminary findings, just based off what they see.
But okay, wow. So, but Walter had the drop on whoever was in the basement. Did he say, I have him cornered?
Yeah, he said, I have him cornered in the cubbyhole.
Okay, so Walter had, presumably Tom, cornered in the basement. He had a gun, maybe a little one, but he had a gun. How the hell did he and his wife end up dead? Because I could see Tom disarming his father and killing him in self-defense, but not his mom. So what happened?
Well, police put out a search on Pat's car that had been, spotted in the neighborhood. And because they knew also like Tom and his father had been feuding, and they find her car and her sitting in it alone. And they're like, where is Tom? And she's like, I do not know. I went earlier today. I had a doctor's appointment and Tom had driven me, and because she needed to get her shoulder x-rayed, the one that she'd broke. And she went into the office while Tom left. She assumed to go to the bank while she was in her appointment. She, couldn't drive, wasn't supposed to drive because of her collarbone. Tom drove her everywhere.
Right.
And when she came out of her appointment, he hadn't returned yet. So she went to wait in the Jeep, and she just was sewing a little sewing project she had while she waited. A few hours pass and she's like, what the heck? Where is Tom? So she goes and she finds a payphone, and she makes a few different calls to hospitals and any place she can think of where he could possibly be if something happened, but she cannot find him anywhere. So she goes back to the Jeep, waits a bit longer before deciding to drive. She knows Tom's parents and grandparents live close to here. She was like, maybe he went there to talk to them. She's like, maybe I should drive over there and see if he's there. So she just starts to drive over there, but she ends up chickening out and parking just on the side of the road, which is about halfway from her doctor's appointment to their houses. And that's where they end up finding her, just waiting. And she says she just did not know what to do because she was just besotted with worry at that point and just completely had no idea what to do and just freaking out and all this stuff. So Tom ends up arriving home around 2:30 a.m. in the morning and is arrested at 3 a.m. for the murder of his mom and dad.
Okay.
Tom's story is that he had driven Pat to her doctor's appointment, but they had gotten into a fight, and he decided to just walk home. And he had been hitchhiking/walking home since the appointment, which was around 3:30, and was debating leaving Pat, but ultimately realized, I'm not going to leave her, like divorcing her. And this is about a 60-mile walk.
What?
Yeah.
You would have to hitchhike that.
He says that he mostly walked it, and he was able to catch a few rides, but it was mostly walking it, which is why he got home so late.
That would take way too long to walk. You could not arrive in 24 hours unless you were hoofing it.
Yeah, I don't know, but he was adamant that he had not been at his parents' house at all. So the autopsy reveals that the mom had been shot with a 20-gauge shotgun.
It's not a small weapon.
Not only is it not a small weapon, but there's the pistol and the rifle in the basement, but there's no shotgun that was found. So then police examine the yard and look closer around there, and they find a shotgun that had been tossed into some bushes about 100 feet from the house. Unfortunately, there's no fingerprints found on the gun at this point. This is 1973, 74. I don't think they had great fingerprint looking abilities, because they're there was no fingerprints found on any of the guns. And I was like, but the freaking father and mom were holding their gun. And they're like, there's a partial finger. So I just think their ability to check was not good. I don't think the gun was wiped down.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Now, 3 eyewitnesses come forward to say they saw a man running in the neighborhood as if fleeing. He was hunkered down low, trying not to be seen and just booking it.
Well, shit, was it Tom after all?
So the police do a lineup, and each of the 3 eyewitnesses pick out Tom.
Oh. Okay, so it was Tom.
So the trial began on September 9th, 1974, and Pat insisted on being there during the trial, sitting right with him the entire time and being at every single meeting between him and his lawyer. And at some point, Tom's aunt had tried to suggest an attorney, but Pat was adamant about doing her own research and choosing the best to defend Tom. And with Tom being in prison, money became very tight and she was having to start selling off their stuff. And Tom begged his grandparents to help out. His grandparents, who had helped with the down payment on the promise that they'd be able to move on the property and live there with them, which never happened and didn't even start to happen. Those grandparents.
Yeah, why didn't they move in after all?
Because Tom was supposed to build them a little cottage. He never built them anything.
Oh, damn it. Okay.
Yeah. So anyways, the grandparents are at this point trying to stay out of it. Their son had just been murdered. Mm-hmm. His wife had been murdered. And their grandson was accused of murder. And they're just like, what is happening? And so at one point, Tom was offered a plea deal. He was up for the death sentence. And the plea deal was for a couple years. It was a decade in prison.
That's not bad. Damn.
However, Pat refused. She was like, absolutely not. You will not plead guilty for something you did not do. We are going to trial.
If you didn't do it, that's fair.
And Tom was like, okay, I'll do what you want. And his lawyer was like, I suggest you take the plea deal. You are up for the death sentence, sir.
Yeah.
But he listened to his wife, and there was no actual evidence that Tom had been in the basement. It was all speculation and those eyewitnesses. But that wasn't enough. And he was found guilty for the murder of his mom and dad.
That's kind of crazy considering there's no proof of it being... I mean, the eyewitnesses portion is damning, but there's no one to put him at the actual scene, the actual basement with the actual weapon.
I think it was the eyewitnesses.
It's just, we saw him running from the house.
Mm-hmm. I think it was the eyewitnesses and also the fact of this whole feud with his dad.
That does actually, I think, make it a little more... Damn, is that beyond a reasonable doubt? I don't know.
It was back then. But don't worry, because the prosecution asked that the death penalty be waived due to Tom's surviving family members not wanting that. So he was only sentenced to 2 concurrent life sentences.
Should have taken the plea.
But he was up. I don't understand this. His exact sentence was 2 concurrent life sentences with the possibility of parole in 7 years. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Right.
But I guess it makes sense.
I guess. I don't know. I mean, maybe because the jury did find him guilty, but maybe the judge was like, yeah, he was found guilty, but I feel like the evidence was kind of...
Well, if I was the judge, I would be thinking, if it's true, your dad was coming around exposing himself to your wife and making me feel unsafe, then this isn't a totally victimless crime.
Maybe.
So provided you're good in prison,
you can come out.
Sure, because the odds of you just you're not you can go out and killing someone at random. He's clearly not a violent person by default.
Yeah.
So maybe you're not really a threat to society, provided no one comes around your property exposing themselves to your wife.
That's fair. But anyway, so he does go to prison. While he's in prison, the farm gets behind on payments, despite Tom's best efforts to get his grandparents to pay for it. They refuse to put their own house up for sale to pay for his because...
Of course.
Yeah, understandably. But oddly, the farm ends up burning down.
So strange.
It is weird. I mean, kind of weird. I'm pretty sure Pat did it. But so
yeah, I mean, that's why, yes, that was the subtext of my comment.
So Pat tries to collect. I think this girl just did not read the fine print because she tries to collect the insurance money and they're like, actually, this goes towards your mortgage and all the payments you're behind on, and you get nothing.
Okay.
So, yeah. Unfortunately, she didn't really get anything except for the money to go towards the mortgage. So, yeah. And while Tom's in prison, Pat records all of her conversations with him. He knows, and she says it's because they don't get enough time to talk, so she likes to listen back and hear his voice.
Sure.
But on one of those recordings, not on one, on many of those recordings, you can hear her progressively trying to get him to agree to a suicide pact.
Why?
I mean, I assume if he dies, she gets life insurance money.
Oh. So she just would be like, yeah, I'm totally about to kill myself. You ready? Okay, go.
You
Still
dead?
alive? Yeah, you're still alive. Oh, guess he's dead.
Yeah. And
Wild.
while she's doing that, she even offers to smuggle in poison for him. And she's like, we can do it together.
True love.
True love. And so while she's, working on this angle, she also becomes increasingly close to his grandparents.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised they'd want anything to do with her.
So
I guess from their point of view, she's a victim in all this.
Yeah. So they're called Pa is the grandpa and Nona is the grandma.
Okay.
And she makes sure to visit them daily, and she calls if she wasn't going to make it. And she really helps out around the house because Nona had that stroke. So she was having trouble, and Pa's getting older. So she just really makes sure to be helpful.
She's angling for that inheritance, huh?
I mean, I don't know. You tell me, because she was very strategic and would discuss how their living daughter, Tom's aunt, was trying to steal their money and they should leave everything to Tom.
The guy who killed your children.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
Well, she convinces them that Tom didn't do it, don't worry.
Oh, impressive.
Yeah. But she's very manipulative. It's very interesting. I don't know everything she talked to them about, but she clearly became very trusted in this household. And then she kind of makes sure they don't have access to anybody else. She cuts them off. She won't let the sister come visit them. She takes over everything. And 2 months after the murder of Tom's grandparents, she managed to talk them into amending their will.
Wait, 2 months after the murder of Tom's parents?
Sorry. Yeah. She talks the grandparents into amending their will so that Tom would receive half and his aunt's children would receive half.
Wow.
And cutting the aunt out completely.
Wow.
Wait, sorry. Yeah. Tom. And then a few months after that, the will once again gets amended so that Pat was added as an executor to serve in Tom's place if he was unable to.
Insane.
Yeah. And a big way that she was managing to manipulate everybody in her life, from her mom to Tom to the grandparents, was that she was also going through some wild health issues at the time. And she was fighting through these health issues to help the grandparents. And one of the health issues was these abscesses were showing up on her body, and the doctors were perplexed. I know words. And they could not figure out why it was happening. And she was in a lot of pain. And she was telling Tom that she could die at any moment because the doctors could not figure this out. And she was saying the doctors were telling her that she could die at any moment. And Tom was like, oh my gosh, you can't.
From an abscess?
Yeah, because the doctors weren't really saying this. She was telling Tom. Yeah. And a quote I read Anne Rule's book on this case that I should look up the name of. Everything She Ever Wanted by Anne Rule is the book that I read. And a quote from that book is, this quote was so gross, I had to read it to Kobe. Pat's abscess became an out-of-control volcano. It was as big as a fist, extending 3 or 4 inches down into her right buttock. The odor from the wound was nauseatingly putrid. And it got to the point where they were worried that she was going to get sepsis and die.
And they can't, even if you can't figure out the cause of it, why can't you treat it?
She was on antibiotics.
They kept getting worse?
They were trying to clean it. It kept getting worse.
What is she doing to herself? What is she injecting in her butt?
And it got to a point where Pat was like, I can't come and visit Nona and Pa as much. So Marguerite, her mom, Pat's mom, was going and helping out instead. But in early 1976, Pa had a heart attack. And miraculously, Pat was suddenly able to drive and get there and take care of them, even though she had been in so much pain beforehand that she wasn't able to get out of bed. But, she rallied. And that same month as the heart attack, there was once again an alteration to the will. Tom and Pat became the sole heirs. And if Tom was unable to fulfill that, Pat would get everything.
Okay.
And Pa, he was 78 years old, but he was still considered able-bodied, mentally there, very strong. Up to this point, he had been taking care of his wife, who was partially paralyzed. He was keeping the house in order. He was cooking for them. He was doing everything. But when Pat began watching them, they began to go downhill. And was it because age was catching up with them, or was it because she's a horrible person who was poisoning them? I don't know.
Any proof of either?
So Pat starts to call the doctor constantly to discuss how Pa had started throwing up every night. He was getting more lethargic. He was forgetful. At one time, he had even threatened or tried to kill Nona, his wife, who he had loved and adored for decades. And the doctor was shocked to learn that Pa was drinking almost every night and taking pills against Pat's wishes. Like, she would come in and find him just like have a handful of pills he was taking, and she'd be like, "You can't take those pills. I don't know what they are." And no, Pa was like, "I'm taking these pills." And Pa was somebody who did not drink, by the way. Like, he was never a drinker and he never drank. He was sober. So the doctor knew this and was just like, "What is happening?"
Yeah, I feel so bad for these old people.
Yeah. And it was said that they did have an exorbitant amount of pills in their house because they were kind of, they were alive during the Great Depression, so they kept everything. So if they were ever prescribed anything and they didn't use it, they still kept it. So, and they were almost 80 years old, so that adds up to a lot of prescriptions.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a few days after she had last talked to the doctor, she calls the doctor again and she's like, "I cannot wake up Pa. I need you to come and take a look at him." So the doctor arrives, and keep in mind, like, this is a small town.
Yeah, they made house calls.
Yeah, exactly. And so the doctor comes and he's like looking at Pa and he's like, he is in critical condition, and he calls an ambulance to take Pa to the hospital because it's something that more than a house call doctor needs to do. Now, the lawyers who handle Pa's estate and will had an envelope, and it said not to open until he passes out. Not even dies, it said passes out. And the lawyers were just like, oh, they didn't think much of it. It's like probably like letters to give to his family or something, And they didn't say that's what they thought it was, but I assume that's what they thought it was, because that's probably pretty common, is you give your lawyer something to hand out to family members when it comes close to time for you to die.
Yeah.
And you know how, like, in How I Met Your Mother, Lily and Marshall write those letters to each other? Yeah.
Yeah, the death notes.
Death notes, there you go.
Or is that what they're called? Something like that.
Sure. But inside that envelope, they find a confession written. A confession that he had murdered his children, and Tom took the fall for it.
No.
And this letter was dated April 19th, 1976. Now, this confession letter was written on a typewriter, but signed by Pa at the bottom and even notarized.
Okay, that's compelling.
Now, the police go to the notary who had notarized it, and they're like, "Do you know what this is?" And she's like, "Oh, I did not even realize I notarized that. It must have been when Pat and Pa had come in to see her, and she had been notarizing a bunch of things for them for like the will amendments and stuff. And Pat was just telling them, like, sign here, notarize here. like she had been lifting up the bottoms of the papers and they weren't even reading them.
Okay, that's what I had in mind that she must have done.
Yeah.
I would have expected the person who notarizes them to not just be like, yeah, stamp, stamp, stamp. But
I've only been to a notary once in my life, and she read everything. We were there for, like, it was when we bought our house. We were there for poor Kobe. He had just gotten off the night shift, and I was like, Kobe, we have to go. And he was like, go where? And I was like, we're about to buy the house. And he was like, gosh, darn it, Danielle. So we and it took like 4 hours. She read everything. It was insane.
yeah, because of things like this.
Probably.
You can't put your stamp on that.
Mm-hmm. And so she hadn't even realized what she was signing. But one of those wasn't the written confession. It was a blank paper.
Oh, okay. Well, why would she do that? Why would you notarize a blank paper?
Because she didn't look at it. She was just notarizing as she went. So that was pretty smart of Pat, because like if the notary had caught it, she'd have been like, oh, whoops. Like I accidentally left a blank paper in there, right? But she didn't. Instead, she notarized it, and Pat got a notarized, signed by both of them sheet of paper.
Yeah, a blank check pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So the notary date was April 16th. Keep that in mind. So Jean, Nona and Pa's daughter, who had been written out of the will, finds out that Pa's in a coma. So she comes and like, she kind of comes in and is just like, what is happening? Because she kind of had been away for a while. And she did know that Nona and Pa like weren't communicating with her anymore, and she thought that was really weird. But apparently, according to her, there was just random estrangements in this family. Like it wasn't the first time this had happened. She was kind of like, I don't know what happened, and it sucks, but like it's not unheard of. So when she comes and Pa's in a coma, he ends up waking up and she's like, hi. And he's like, hi. And she's like, what do you think is happening? And he's like, did I have another stroke? But no, the doctors are like, you did not have a stroke. And so Jean begins to like focus on Pat, who's just constantly hovering around and there. And Jean and also is the one saying that Pa's drinking and taking pills. And then she thinks about that milk that had formaldehyde found in it. And so Jean begins to look into poisons. And she requests a poison test from the hospital.
Oh, she's smart.
Yeah. And so they take hair clippings, some urine, and fingernails. And because at this point, it's probably not in his actual system anymore. But apparently, some poisons leave traces in your hair and nail clippings and stuff.
Yeah. We covered this once, I think, but they can stay in your body depending on the poison for up to weeks.
Yeah.
In like your hair and nails. So
they end up finding a positive test for arsenic.
Arsenic, I think, can last in hair for years.
Yeah.
Because there have been cases of people exhuming bodies.
Exactly. And the crazy thing is, I think they can tell, like, based off, like, the strand, how long it was in your system.
Oh, because it
like, changes something.
Yeah, and then as the hair grows, you can sort of, estimate the hair growth. Mm-hmm. Be like, oh, well, then it was introduced in the body X time ago.
Yeah, and so they see that it's not just an overdose, but this is long-term arsenic poisoning. And so Jean is like, oh my gosh, Pat's 100% doing this, and she is Nona okay? So she quickly is like, we have to get Nona taken to a hospital to be tested and treated if needed. And so the police actually end up going to the house to get Nona, and they try to take her, and Pat's like yelling at Nona, and she's like, don't go, they're trying to get you to go and take tests, but your medical insurance won't cover it. You will owe so much money if you let them take these tests. She's like, you'll lose your house. And poor Nona's like, oh no, my insurance doesn't cover it. I can't get this taken. And so like that's the kind of manipulation Pat did. She was so good at, like, who would think, But Nona does get the test, and she tests positive for arsenic poisoning, but less than what Pa had in his system. And they test a bunch of stuff in the house for arsenic. And the only thing that tests positive is a bottle that is close to empty that had held alcohol.
I thought they didn't drink. So was he making them drink alcohol that was laced with arsenic?
So the amount of arsenic they found in this bottle, the book said that if you took a swig of this, it would have killed you. So I think what she was using is she was taking it and putting it in their food, and that was just a holding container.
Okay.
Which would make more sense than trying to get somebody to drink who doesn't drink.
Yeah.
And Pat is arrested for the attempted murder of Nona and Pa. Her trial went as expected. She was decimated. Like, absolutely just thrown to the ground and curb stomped.
Good.
For lack of a better way of saying it. And she was sentenced to 10-year prison terms to be served consecutively, which was the harshest sentencing possible.
Really?
Yeah.
I think she should have gotten the death penalty.
Well, she didn't kill. I think if she had actually murdered them, it would have happened, maybe.
I mean, but that was clearly her intention.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, why? This is what I mean. Like, Tom getting 2 consecutive life sentences for killing, and granted, his mom, that's hard you can't justify that one. But killing his dad, you can at least be like, he thought his dad was coming around his property, exposing himself to his wife. Mm-hmm. But here you have Pat who killed 2 innocent, harmless people, or attempted to kill them.
I also partially wonder if back then there was just a huge, I forgot to tell you during the trial. Okay, but a huge sexism kind of thing where women just got lesser sentences.
Could be. I've heard of that even happening now. Like, women who commit violent crimes don't get the same sentences.
But during the trial, Pat's mom, Marguerite, who, by the way, has never swayed from defending Pat, still doesn't. Like, during the trial, she was trying to help Pat. She said that once she was trying to get, Pat went crazy, and that's why Pat did this. What's it called? The
dementia?
No, like you go crazy and therefore you...
Oh, the insanity.
There you go.
She pled insanity.
Well, she didn't, but Pat's mom, Marguerite, was trying to get Pat to. So when Marguerite testified, she told the jury about how she walked in on Pat taking tweezers and picking at her abscess.
Yes, I knew it.
So she was doing it to herself.
I knew it.
It's horrible. Like, oh my gosh. Like, maybe she is crazy.
Where's the line?
I don't know.
Because look, I would say she's not crazy because everything she's doing with intent.
Yeah, that's fair. It was with intent. It wasn't like she was harming herself to get sympathy and probably keep people from looking too closely at anything because they're all focused on, she's like, oh, my health issues and I'm trying to take care of the grandparents. It's just so hard.
Right.
So nobody looks too closely at anything.
Yeah. But no, I would say insanity is when you are incapable of determining right from wrong.
Yeah.
She knew what she was doing.
Yeah. And the lawyer didn't even try insanity. So I don't know if he was just a bad lawyer or he didn't think there was a...
No, I think he's probably a good lawyer. From what I've heard, it's 99% of insanity pleas
don't receive it.
Yeah.
So anyways, Tom ends up divorcing Pat and remarrying.
What? Wait, so did he get a lighter sentence as a result of this or anything?
He does get out of prison. I'm not sure when. He does not get a lighter sentence because of this, but he does really, really well in prison. He ends up teaching kids blacksmith stuff, and he works making leather goods, and he just really excels in prison, and he ends up getting out. I don't know, I can look up when.
So did he actually kill his parents?
That's the thing. Yes.
He did?
He did. But
how did he kill? Why did he kill his mom?
He says he did, but I don't know exactly what happened. I think if I had to guess, what happened is that he was in the cubbyhole. His dad was there with his little pistol. His mom comes down with the rifle And they find in the cubbyhole, they found some shots from the pistol. So maybe his dad did try to shoot him, and maybe he went to shoot his dad and it like hit his mom. I don't know. Either way, he was there.
But wasn't his mom hit with the shotgun shell?
Which is what he
Or
had.
shotgun?
Yeah, which is what he had. He ditched the shotgun when he ran.
He went into the house with a shotgun. That's intense. And was his dad killed by a shotgun?
I think his dad was killed with the rifle. So I think it was just a crazy accidental shootout. And I think Pat's motive was that she wanted Tom to die. She wanted all of them to die. And she thought she would inherit his parents' money.
I mean, it's the fact that he killed both of his parents, excuse me, is a huge fluke.
Right.
Like
that wasn't supposed to happen.
no.
Yeah.
So like in no situation.
Because think about him going to prison in no way benefits Pat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, this is as good as it possibly could have gone, and it still ends with one person alive. But there's no chance the situation plays out where they all shoot each other and then bleed out without getting help.
I think that was Pat's plan. But I don't think it was well thought out. It's so wild. It's like, what? That's what I mean. You're just left like, what the heck? And also, like, what about the freaking formaldehyde in the milk? What was her plan? Did she do that? Was there some weird, I don't know. Like, was she trying to kill his children?
I have a hard time.
Or was that some weird fluke of there was just freaking formaldehyde in milk?
I have a hard time imagining how she could have snuck that in.
Yeah. So maybe it was a weird fluke. Like
unless this was the time when milk was put at your front door by a milkman, then I could see it.
Oh, maybe.
If
And
that
she
is the
would be
case-
crazy enough to do that.
Yeah, if that's what was happening then yeah, that's how she did it. And in which case, yeah, easy, open, shut.
Yeah. And then also, like, did she hide up and shoot his parents' car out? She had to have. It had to have been
I think
her.
she had to have, yeah.
It's just insane. Like, absolutely insanity.
Yeah.
But it gets crazier.
What? It's not over?
No, I only have like 3 more bullet points. It's almost over. But she ends up getting released in 1987. She serves her full sentence, gets released, and she gets a job working as a nurse for an elderly rich couple.
Why would anyone hire her?
Yes, why would anybody hire her? But this elderly rich couple do. And unfortunately, the husband dies soon after. So just the wife is left. And then she ends up getting fired and pleading guilty to stealing a bunch of their stuff and lying about being a registered nurse. So she gets 8 more years in prison. But they never test the husband's body, so we don't know
She poisoned
if
him.
she poisoned him or not.
Wow.
And after that, she gets out and she opens a doll shop. And
How old is this woman?
keep in mind, she married Tom when she was like 30.
Yeah, but this was like, she was born in like the 30s.
Yeah, this is 1987. So,
Oh, they said 97.
oh,
Okay.
no, 87. So she's
Okay.
like 50s.
Okay.
And then she has 8 more years of prison. And then she gets out and she opens a doll shop. And it's named something.
Is she still running the doll shop? No, she can't possibly still be alive.
That's what I tried. I tried finding, nowhere says that she's dead. And I was like, how old is this woman?
What was her full name again? Because Patricia wasn't her first name.
Yeah. Oh, I just look up Patricia Allanson, Allanson.
Allanson.
She named the doll shop Pat's Pretty Playthings.
Of course she did.
Yeah.
She can't possibly still be alive, right?
I don't know. It's a calculator. How old would she be? 19?
She would be
37 to now.
88.
She could still be alive.
Yeah, she should be 87 until August, but she could still be alive, yeah. Although I don't know how she'd be surviving without any kind of retirement or, yeah.
Well, after she gets out, she ends up moving in with her stepfather because Marguerite had died by that time. So maybe she just inherited the house and...
I guess it's possible, right?
because her only brother died, so that's like her family. I don't know. Maybe Pat's Pretty Playthings just made so much money.
Or maybe it took off.
Yeah.
Well, is that the end of the story?
Yeah. That's the end of the story. I'm sorry. That's got to be such a long story.
An hour and a half. Not that bad.
Oof, that's brutal.
But thank you for the story. That was insane.
Absolutely insane.
Yeah.
I don't even. And then Tom later came out and he was like, yeah, being away from her and looking back, I see how she really manipulated the situation. And
Yeah, a bit.
yeah. And he was like, not happy about it. So
Yeah, fair enough.
yeah, I mean, both of his parents ended up dead because of this woman.
Yeah.
And then his grandparents almost died.
She almost wiped
All
out.
because of this woman he was married to for like not very long before all this happened.
If she'd gotten Tom to agree to the suicide pact and killed the grandparents, she would have wiped out 3 generations of this man's family.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. And she wasn't even very smart about it.
No. I gotta find a picture from when she was young. Is this her?
She has big hair, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's her. She has big hair. That's her.
That's her.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, no comment. But I would not kill my parents for her. Is what I'll say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, all right. Thanks everybody for listening. That was a very long one, but
Yep.
what a wild ride.
We hope you enjoyed it. Please follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our Patreon, where we post 2 miniseries once a month when we can.
We do like 1 miniseries a month.
Yeah.
That's our goal at minimum.
Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye.